Well, thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to talk about my favorite subject, which is the job search. So, again, my name is Georgia Katsianis. I am the owner of Career Development Savant, and I'll start off by giving you a little bit of a background about me. Then we'll go over the agenda. I like it to be, excuse me, an interactive session. So if you have any questions, let me know. And of course I lose my voice a little bit, but if I may also ask a question out there too, so please feel free to share that. Excuse me. So I have over 20 years of experience in human resources. I started in benefits, went to training, then HR generalist. My last 10 years, I've been in talent acquisition. I've worked directly for HR as well as consultant at agencies and in various industries like IT, engineering, manufacturing, finance, and education. Also teach career development and HR courses on a grad and undergrad level, and also have been a career coach on a volunteer and professional basis for over 10 years. So with that, I have a lot of different experience, and I've seen things from every different angle. And of course, I've been in the job search for years as well. So a little bit about me there. So I'll get started about the agenda for today. So what I'm going to do is talk about the overall hiring process, where to begin, look at resumes and LinkedIn, also talk about networking, the interview process, and the follow-up, talking about the most fun part, which is the offer and negotiations, as well as we'll have time for questions. So now, the job search process, it's basically looking for a new job, which is time-consuming, overwhelming, and emotional. So all of these emotions can make it very difficult to concentrate on the job search, which could lead to a slow process or accepting a job that's just not right for you. So one way to get over this is to just understand how the hiring process works and how to get noticed by recruiters and hiring managers. So the hiring process overall just begins with a business need that's raised by the department or hiring manager. So just going through that, first we begin with a job description, and we get that approved by for headcount. Then that is presented over to the HR or recruiter. Here I'm just going, it could be an HR person or it could be a recruiter. Here I'm just going to be referring to it as a recruiter when I'm speaking. Or we're going to send that over to a staffing agency, which is a third party. So then at that point, the hiring manager provides criteria that is necessary to perform the job, which is knowledge, skills, and abilities. Then we post the job. Then the recruiter is going to start the process of looking at resumes or sourcing, which means that they're contacting individuals that have not applied to the job, but can be referred to as passive candidates. Also, then at that point, we would contact the candidates for phone interviews. So just getting to know them a little bit, salary expectations, a little bit about experience. And then if everything looks good, we'll go ahead and forward that information over to the hiring manager. And then they will decide if they want to continue through the interview process with that candidate. And the interview process can look very different depending on the role and depending on the organization. And then comes the offer. So that's the entire hiring process there from your so that you can know that perspective. So there are a few people that you're going to be familiar with and I'd like to talk about. So that is a recruiter. So a recruiter, so you could, as I mentioned, you could be talking to maybe an HR generalist, an HR business partner, recruiter. So those are the individuals that work directly for the organization and would be responsible for being the liaison between the job seeker and the organization. So those are the individuals that you're going to be dealing with for most of the time. They're going to be just guiding that process through. Then there's the hiring manager, and the hiring manager is obviously the one that you would be reporting to and a decision maker. So the difference is here. is the hiring manager is the subject matter expert for the role. And so knows those knowledge, skills, and abilities very intimately, whereas the recruiter is a subject matter expert on human resources as well as the job search and recruitment process. So these are the people that you're going to need, that you are trying to market yourself to. So the recruiter, as I mentioned, they are the subject matter expert in the process and the interviewing and all of that. So you're supposed to, with your LinkedIn and with your resume, you are to make it easy so that the recruiter can take a look at it for, let's say, 30 seconds or less, which it's less, to catch their eye, get the information, and so that they know that, hey, I need to spend a little bit more time on this resume rather than just discount it. Then you have the hiring manager who wants to also, at that point, will be very interested in taking a look deeper into that resume. So you also have to cater to them as well. So then you have the staffing agency. The staffing agency is a third party that the organization can go ahead and contact because they need help. It's overwhelming for them. They just don't have the time, or they don't have the expertise, or maybe they don't even have an HR department that's dedicated to recruiting. So they'll go over to the staffing agency. The way the staffing agency works is that they are compensated by the employer. So at that point, if you as a job seeker, you are not to pay. So the only person, like I said, is the organization. So the agency is there to help you. However, if they don't have a job for you, then they would not be contacting you. So it wouldn't be someone that would be assisting you through the job search. If there's people that are assisting you through the job search, just kind of coaching you and helping you, that would be kind of a career coach. And that's something that I do as well. So that's kind of helpful for you to know. So let's talk about the job search process. So there's about 7 steps here. We'll talk about the self-assessment, which is you getting to know yourself. Then there's the marketing strategy, your networking strategy. Where are you going to kind of market yourselves, and where are you going to do that? It's usually going to be LinkedIn. And then step 3 here is a marketing tools. Your marketing tools will be your resume, will be, again, your LinkedIn, could be a cover letter, could be just depending on various sites that you can be a part of. It's kind of like some IT sites, and also if you have a website, anything like that. So step 4 is preparing for the interview. And what you would do here is thinking about, I'm going to research the organization, and I'm going to talk about, what am I going to wear? Even though it's a Zoom, you still have to worry about what you're going to wear and how you're going to look and how you're going to present yourself. And now you're going to have to think about your environment. Then you're going to prepare for your interview questions. Then you have the follow-up, and then you're going to be evaluating job offers. So that's there. That's the entire process there. So let's think about how you're going to brand yourself in the marketplace. And this is very important, kind of how I mentioned that there's the different roles out there. So you have the hiring manager and you have the recruiters, right? You even have the staffing agencies that are going to be, looking at your resume. So I think I see here Q&A, so I can just pop on this and take a look. Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead. Or do you want me to read it for you?
I can do it.
Okay.
All right. So Philip mentioned here, why is it when I had 3 people recommend and walk my resume to HR at 3 enterprise companies, they would not even interview me? I'm over 58. It seems HR is a contributor to ageism. Do you agree? So at this point, I'm a little unsure kind of what happened there. Usually when someone is recommended, we would take a look at the resume and kind of entertain a conversation. So I'm not necessarily thinking that it is ageism, just because in that case, I would kind of say, kind of how would the individual, like, how would I know that the individual is of a certain age, right? Unless it's just kind of given away, but that still wouldn't give me, that wouldn't be a reason why I would discount an individual. The reason why I would discount an individual would be more of if they didn't have the experience required, if it was. So that's why when we talk about, when we get to the point of the resume, we kind of say that limit it to 10 years. Because if you're limiting your resume to 10 years, yes, it does prevent ageism, but also that experience before that may be irrelevant, right? So if that's, because it's been so long. So right now, kind of how I mentioned, my last 10 years I've been in recruiting. And for my agency, what I concentrate on, my recruiting agency, Career Development Savant, I concentrate on as an agency for IT and the financial industry. So that is what I'm concentrating on there. And then anything else prior to my experience will lend value to what I'm doing, but I'm concentrating on this now, right? So this is what you want to hear about. Does that make sense? So then I would say, well, if it's been that long, that experience is outdated, so that's kind of where I would say that. And if you have a photo on LinkedIn, they're going to see how old you are. How do you hide your age then? So, and that's an interesting point right there. So with that, we can't really look at Facebook and kind of make those determinations, because that could also lead to ageism. So, but on LinkedIn, we encourage you to put a picture. At that point, I wouldn't necessarily, you can't really hide it there. What I would, and that's really not what it's all about. I would say just look very modern, and that's how you're going to really prepare yourself. When you're a mature job seeker, you want to make sure that you're relevant, that you know technology, that you have a classic look, right? You don't want to look outdated. So that's why when we look at the resume, we talk about don't have an objective. That's very antiquated. So you could tell age by just looking at when the person graduated from college. You should not include those dates. And recruiters are very interested in your age to know if you could be trained or not. So now that's a misconception and a stereotype, a bias about stating that individuals that are over a certain age do not want to be trained. We could also go back and say that when we talk about the newer generation, millennials, that we have those some different types of biases as well. So we have to be very cognizant of those. And the way to fight any of those stereotypes is to ensure that you portray yourself as relevant, as excited to learn. And that's why when we say, are you going to be taking new certifications or courses or getting involved in different things, that's what that is, right? And then try to use kind of and I'm probably bad at this with the different terminology, and try to keep up with that. Like if you use very old sayings, then maybe at that point people will kind of take a look and kind of make assumptions based on those, but I do that all the time, so I got to watch that myself. Okay, so some things we can hide and some things we can't hide, but you know what, this is where we're going to talk about branding, right? So this is where we get excited, and it doesn't matter how old I am, right? It doesn't matter. This is why I'm excited. This is what I do. This is what I'm doing now. This is what I did in the past. I also talk about career coaching. I've done that all through my career, but now I'm doing this, I'm concentrating on this in my career. Just keep moving forward and talking about that. Get a professional photo taken with nice lighting can make people look 10 years younger on a LinkedIn profile. Absolutely, Daisy. I agree with that. So you just kind of have to look very, make sure that you take care of yourself in every way. So let's talk about the branding, and I'm going to borrow this from borrow this statement. So the process by which you differentiate yourself and stand out from the crowd by identifying your core values and articulating your unique value proposition. What sets you apart from others who do the same thing? Then leveraging it across platforms with a consistent message and image to achieve a specific goal. So by doing this, you build self-confidence, establish your reputation as an expert in your field. So that's why personal branding is very important. It's that we could all have the same roles. However, how do we make ourselves stand out? Move to my next slide. All right. So this is we can think of this as a value proposition. So what a value proposition is, we talk about when someone would ask us, tell us about yourself. Why should I hire you? What have you accomplished? What are your ideas? So here I created a real quick value proposition for myself. Take a look at this. I kind of talk about myself as, I say, I'm a talent acquisition HR consultant with over 20 years of experience in various industries in startup and mature environments. See how I mentioned mature? My passion is career development, which inspired me to become a visiting professor and career coach. My strength is creating long-lasting relationships, connecting the dots for the hiring managers and job seekers to get results. I'm excited to leverage these skills and help you achieve your goals. So I concentrate, I talked about myself, I talked about my passions, I talk about how I do things, and then now I'm talking about the future, right? So that's kind of where I want to show how I've evolved and how I'm still relevant in the market. Because I talk about 20 years, I'm aging myself right there. So let's think about where we should all start the job search process. So it's imperative that you know yourself, right? So that you could create that personal branding strategy and your career goals. So you're going to want to ask yourself, what are your strengths, your weaknesses, your likes, and what your capabilities are. So what I like to do is go ahead and create a list of every job that I've ever had, going down to grade school, delivering those newspapers, and just writing down my strengths, my weaknesses, my likes and my dislikes, and also taking a look at some of my accomplishments. And the reason why I do that is I want to ensure that I have a full inventory of what I've done. As I mentioned earlier, the job search is overwhelming and can be very emotional. And I want to make sure that the way that I portray myself is what is appropriate and what I want to do. I want to really concentrate on that. For example, and this will probably age me as well, I created databases. And the way that I created a database was taking an Access for Dummies book. So I taught myself how to do that. And that's kind of what got me into HR, and I continued to evolve. But that was the first thing that I needed to do, is beside an Excel spreadsheet and how did I run reports. So I created an Access database, and I said it was overwhelming. I didn't feel confident, but I got the job done. So then I found myself talking about that again. And then I got another role doing that. And I said, why am I consistently doing this? This isn't something that I enjoy doing, right? So, and I said, okay, so I'm not going, I may talk about it when someone asks me a behavioral question and says, you know, what have you done, you know, that you've done on your own, you taught yourself how to do, you took your own initiative. That would be something that I can refer to in my career. However, I don't want to advertise that. I don't want to do that again. This isn't what I want to do. Right. So also when we talk about strengths and weaknesses, it's not necessarily trying to take inventory about these are my weaknesses and this is really what I need to fix or make myself feel bad about my weaknesses. It's more about knowing yourself. So because my weakness, I'm going to tell you, is math. So with math, I just said, okay, I don't need math. I told you I'm in recruiting, I'm in HR, and I do career development. I don't necessarily have to do math. My career doesn't have anything to do with that. If I do need help when I'm running my business, I will go to those individuals and find those subject matter experts. That's not a weakness that I need to work on. I decided for my career, I needed to work on my strengths. My strengths are my writing skills as well as speaking. So I want to work on those. So there you go. That's something. And then I said, what in my career, and I mentioned I started in benefits, then moved all the way into talent acquisition, teaching, and career development. So that's how when I took inventory, I went through and decided, what can I do with my life? So, and I see, and then be honest with myself. Why do I want to be honest? Because I don't want to keep repeating that pattern. I want to make sure that I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm confident and I can succeed. All right, let's see a question here. All right. So I'm going to take a quick look about this. Daisy's branding statement, very nice. Strong belief that every product, solution, and technology have stories of simplicity and clarity to impact the world positively, differentiate from competitors, engage customers and end users. Excel at solving business problems through creative design, energy, and unique value propositions while leading strategic relationships with industry, consortia, and external partners to advance business results and joint visions. Empathetic leader leader known for being insightful, optimistic, supportive, considerate, and a collaborative influencer. Live by personal mantra of to know that one life has breathed easier because you lived here. I like it. It's nice. This one I would say, rather than thinking about maybe the value proposition can also be a new term for an elevator pitch. So this, I would say, would be more of a LinkedIn statement, yes, and maybe a statement on your website or anything like that. But I do like it. Take that, incorporate that, and think about how you could include that into an elevator pitch or speech or whatever you want to call it. So Pamela here has a question. I've had 3 interviews with a company I feel passionate about. 1 phone interview, then 2 in-person interviews. I feel that all went very well. I was told I was told I should hear something by the beginning of this week. As of yet, I've not heard anything. What should be my next move with this company? I would definitely follow up. Send an email and tell them, you know, I'm so very excited about this this opportunity. I thought that I would hear something by Monday. I haven't heard anything, so I just wanted to follow up with you. Simple. So we'll move on here. Sorry, my screen sticks a little. All right. So now that we've already taken into consideration kind of what we want to do, what we don't want to do, our strengths, our weaknesses, and we thought about our accomplishments, now we're going to move over to the resume. All right, so just real quick, there's 3 different types of resume. The first is the reverse chronological, where you put your experience, you list your experience in a reverse chronological order. Then you have the functional resume. The functional resume, yes, you include your jobs on there, but you're kind of creating it as what your subject matter of expertise is as well as your accomplishments. But you don't necessarily indicate those where you got that experience, where you got that subject matter of expertise. So the reverse chronological, you're going to be using it as this is this job that I worked at, and this is what I did here, and so forth. The functional just lists the jobs, and then all around it, we'll put in your experience or your subject matter of expertise. The combination, which is my favorite and the most effective, is to combine the 2. So I'll show you some examples, but the resume sections are your heading, your headline, your don't have an objective on there. Instead, have a professional summary, list out your accomplishments, have a technology section if that makes sense. Yeah, your areas of expertise, then you'll list out your education. And that really depends on where you are in your career. If you're going to list your education at the top, if you're a brand new grad, or you just are getting into a new industry, then your work experience, and this is where you're going to be quantifying your experience by talking about, for example, I trained 1,200 people in a month's period. So something like that. So some numbers rather than just blanket statements. Talk about your military experience, any associations, any skills that you have, and don't include anything about references. If we want to know about your references, you're going to be very far along in the process, and we'll be asking you for that later. All right. If you use a functional style, how does an ATS calculate the number of years to your experience? So with that, the applicant tracking system doesn't necessarily break that down. With that, it just necessarily just really looking at your experience. Do you see what I mean? It's more about, well, this is a difficult question, but the way to, so I don't necessarily think that the applicant tracking system is taking a look at breaking things down and showing it that way. But you're going to still, in the functional resume, you're still going to put your years in there that you worked. Here, I'm going to show you here. Just a second. So here, additional experience. So if I'm providing this an additional experience, I've broken it down. I'm still putting my years here. It's not necessarily just listing it out that way. Now, for example, as well as in some cases, you may not want to put this because if you see 1997, that really throws individuals off too. So it would so at that point, it's just, you want to put your years, but you don't have to go as far back as I did, if that makes sense. Okay, we already answered that question, right? All right, so let me go back here. So applicant tracking friendly. So when you're creating a resume, you want to make sure that you don't use headers or footers, columns, tables, or text boxes. And the reason for that is the applicant tracking system. This information that is included in these areas are not accessible. They will not parse over. They're not readable. Okay, you want to put your header, your footer for page 2, like up here where it says my name and my credentials. This doesn't matter here because who cares about what, it's just there so that you know that I'm on page 2 of my resume. But here at the top here where I have my name, this is not a header. This is just regular on the page. Here I have some graphics like open to relocate. Here's my phone number, my LinkedIn. It doesn't matter with those little pictures there. For that information, the information is next to it. And you might think that I have columns here or I have tables or anything like that. I just use the fill function, the color fill function on the Word. So let me see, I have a couple more questions here. I have over 20 plus years of experience, but I was told not to enter more than 15. I did not enter anything I'm thinking in the ATS for more than 15 years. So here, yeah, because as I mentioned earlier, like if you're anything before, if it's more than 10 years ago, people are going to think that that experience is irrelevant, right? But that experience still speaks to you and your life. But necessarily they're going to say, okay, Georgia, when was the last time you were a benefits administrator? And that was over 10 years ago. Do you still think that you're relevant as a benefits administrator? And I could say, well, it's not my current subject matter of expertise. However, I do know all of the basics, the foundation, and all I have to do is just start studying on that. Start studying and becoming relevant again and spend some time in it, and I could catch up on it like this. However, I don't want to do that anymore, right? So why would I include that on there? So I've kind of broken it down and only included things that were relevant. So I was just told to put your highest education level only and not mention the previous ones. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think it depends maybe on the application, but I would include all of your education information. And if you just got a certificate like a PMP, do you need to put in the year? I would do that because that's relevant, right? So if I graduated in 1997, then I'm not going to put that on my resume or on my LinkedIn. So for it, if you put it in there, I feel like I need to put it in when I graduate. No, you don't need to. Just put in when you got your PMP. It's only for the new information because like I said, that information is irrelevant. If you got your degree, in 20 years ago, that's fine, that's great. You build upon that. Your education is important, but at this point, your experience is what's really standing out here. And that was just the foundation for you to get that. So if you spent more than 20 years in the company, how would you present that? Okay, I will show you an example very shortly. And I put all the education levels, but not the date of graduation, and those were not required. Right. You don't have to do that. I only the most current information, and that's how you show that you're still relevant, right? That you're going to school or you're taking classes, you're excited about learning. So let's talk about this. So this is my name, and on the top where I have, these are my credentials. I have an MBA. I'm going for a doctorate degree. I have various other degrees. I did not feel as a talent acquisition consultant that would be very important. I do have that experience at the end of my resume, however, my credentials and my education, but I felt that I wanted to showcase professional certifications, and that's why I've only showed that here. And then here under my headline, which, hey, what an objective used to do, right, would say, what am I looking for in my career? Well, I'm a talent acquisition consultant. Bam, that's my headline, that's my branding. Then I talked about some subject matter of expertise that I wanted to highlight. Then I created my summary here, which I bring in and talk about things that help me in my career, what I've done, in different industries that I worked in, the different jobs that I've held, just my different subjects matter of expertise again. So my technology snapshot, I like to bring that out so you can see the different technologies that I worked with. The areas of expertise, I love having this here because those relevant keywords that we hear about, and the applicant tracking system. I'm going to go back to the applicant tracking system. So when as a recruiter, what we're going to do is not necessarily look for the years of experience. And that's why I kind of fumbled there when you talked to me about the years of experience, is that I'm really looking for these relevant keywords. So for example, if you are a Java developer, a relevant keyword is Java. If you don't have Java on your resume, I'm not going to find you. So think of it as you're in a Word document and you click Control F, and you're looking through a document because you don't want to read the whole thing, or a spreadsheet. So you'll just say, okay, they told me as a recruiter, I need to find someone that has Java. So I'm going to click in Java. So I'm going to type in Java and see who I can find, right? Here, as a talent acquisition consultant, I need to know about Boolean logic. So that would be something there, and then I would say technology, then we would put those two together, and that's how we would find individuals. So I like to use my resume and put in those relevant keywords as much as possible. So I'm going to click to the next slide, and I'll see if those will be able to answer the questions. So here, when you said when you worked for a company for over 20 years, here, what I like to do here, I worked, this shows my career progression through within one organization. So I like to put in up here, it says DeVry Inc., and then over here I have the dates. So it looks like from 2016 or 2006 to 2011, I worked at one company, and these are the different roles that I've held. And LinkedIn will also do this. You could do this on your LinkedIn as well. But that's kind of how I would show that there. But you're highlighting your different skills and your experience there at the organization. So here, so you're going beyond your 10 years. And this is how you could put dates in, you cannot put dates in. This is beyond 10 years. Look at this. This is 1997 to 2006. I don't necessarily do that. I may show it on my resume. I may think it's irrelevant and I'll take it off. Then I could just have here my education and my certifications. I don't even have my doctorate on here because I didn't think that, I thought that would be a detractor. So let me go back to these questions up here. What font style? Okay. I think I'm missing this question up here. Your answer conflicts with what is taught in the ATA class. Was told you have to list the attributes with each job that indicates the number of years, and ATS will combine all the years in order to meet the job requirements. So here in this case, was told you have to list the attributes with each job that indicates the number of years. That one I'm not sure when you say list the attributes with the number of years. So you mean if you have Java experience, you should list that out separately. I may need to address that later, and I may need to defer to the people that teach the course and see maybe if I understand that a little bit better. So, and then what, I'm sorry, was someone going to say
Georgia?
something?
Yeah, Georgia.
Yes.
What I was told, and you know, every recruiter does things different,
Yeah.
even internally, was if they were looking for someone with 5 to 9 years experience with Excel, and you
Mhm.
only have it in a job of 3 years, it shows you only have 3 years experience. That's what I was told. And then also from an
Okay.
IT recruiter, he wanted to see in each job the environment that people worked in. So kind of like your Java experience, if you've had 3 jobs where you've used Java, then you should put it in there. I think that's what she's talking about, because that's what I.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that's what you're going to want to do. Not necessarily. So this is the thing. I want to see that. I want to see in the jobs, you're going to want to show your, and we'll talk about the quantifying, right? So if you did Java in each job, then you want to talk about it. But I'm not necessarily going to say, if I pull up your resume and like I'll say number of years of experience total. So if I'm hiring someone that's entry level and someone has 20 years of experience, I may just say, I may just want to look at someone that has 1 to 2 years of experience total, but I'm still going to have to bring up your resume and take a look at it. So if you, and then when I look at your resume, I'm going to want to see all of the different experience that you have. If you only listed out, you know, I want to see the relevant keyword in there, yes, but I also want to see the different jobs that you've done, that you worked in, that you have that experience, if that makes sense. So it goes, it's not necessary, I don't want you to necessarily just have in your mind, I have to beat an applicant tracking system. Okay. So, and then I see that you have a second page for your resume. I was told many times not to do this. All right, good, good. So I was going to get to that. Yes, we'd like to have it at 1 page. However, if you have relevant experience, you could move to page 2. Anything of more than page 2 might be a CV, and that's something else that we could talk about. So as long as it's relevant. And how do you know? Perfect. Okay, I like this question. How do you know what the keywords would be? You are your subject matter expert in your job. You kind of know what is important when you are searching for what you can do in your job. Think of yourself as a hiring manager and what you would like to see on a resume. And then also when you're applying to jobs, that's what you're going to know, that those are some keywords. If it says, oh, we're looking for someone with this certification or this kind of experience, then you're going to know that's a relevant keyword. What font size and what font style and size, and that I would say like 11 or 12 would be the font size, or even 10, and then you could use like the Calibri, Arial Narrow, Times New Roman, just more of those classics. And in your area of expertise where you have 3 columns, will those work with the ATS system? Those are not columns. I actually did that with colors. And if it were columns, then it would not work in the ATS, no. So I use the job scan to help with resume and job post gap analysis. The issues are the scan often produce some gaps that are hard to fit into the detail without butchering the detail. One really needs a strong writing skill. Any recommendation on how to train ourselves better? So with that, it would be more of, if you have, for example, LinkedIn Learning, there are some courses, training you could take on resume writing. There's also joining different job clubs that will help you with that. Different tutorials out there, watching YouTube. And something that I'm going to say, the job search is not a science. You are going to get a lot of different information out there, free on YouTube. All the different people that Jim mentioned, we all have different opinions, different recommendations. So the important thing is for you to do your research, to ask questions, know yourself, and then do what you feel is comfortable. If something is not working, then let's talk to someone and revise things. Hopefully that helps. So, resume tips here. Your resume should stand out from the crowd in a good way. So you don't want it to look like a job description. Some people will tell you, take the job description, copy and paste that, put that in your resume, and then the applicant tracking system will find you. That is not correct. Once we see that and other people do that, then we're going to know what you did. It's just a job description. You're not quantifying anything, right? So quantifying, again, showing some numbers. Maybe I'm a project manager. I've handled multi-million-dollar projects, or I'm a trainer. I've trained 1,200 people, or I'm a customer service person, and I have 95%. 95% accuracy. All of the different things that you could do. If you're a salesperson, how much have you sold, right? What have you won? What kind of awards? This is what I want to see. If you're talking about someone who is a customer service person, people might say, that's a customer service person. I know exactly what they did, but what they do. And that's where we're talking about stereotypes. And you may know what a benefits person does or a customer service person does, but I'm going to use my resume. I'm going to use my LinkedIn. I'm going to market myself. I'm going to show you why I'm unique, what I brought to the table, why I made that job, how I made that difference. Make sure your resume is clear, organized, and easy to read. It shouldn't be a scavenger hunt. And sometimes information, kind of like I showed you when I showed you my different careers, my career progression at an organization, that might not parse over correctly in an applicant tracking system. And, that's just the matter of life. Do not include an objective. Do not write references available upon request. Include that professional summary, achievements, training, and certifications. Think about the job that you're applying to. Think about what a hiring manager wants to see on the resume and what you would value. And try to use months and years if it makes sense, if it'd be consistent within your resume. So let's say you worked in 2020 and you worked from January 2020 until December 2020. If you don't put the months and the years on there, it'll just look like 2020. So that's my example there. But in some cases, it's irrelevant. Okay. So ResuMatch is a great tool to compare your resume with the job description. Yes, it shows keyword count for both hard and soft skills, similar to JobScan. Absolutely. Thank you, Devon. And I was advised not to use month, but only year. Well, Daisy, that like I said, it just makes it take a look. My resume, it made sense for me to do that. In some cases, it doesn't matter, right? And I should kind of talk to you about if you worked in 1 year and something happened, you were laid off or whatever, talking about 2020, what would you do? Just put 2020? So that's kind of my example there. Again, you have to take things with a grain of salt with what you hear. So we just talked about length already. We talked about writing style. Do not put the I statements like I did this, I did that on a resume. You want to make sure that your resume is accurate. So when you're putting months or years, make sure your information is accurate, that you depicted yourself appropriately. Use those action verbs, kind of talking about I led a program, I spearheaded a program, I demonstrated or I facilitated. Quantify not just the job description. Talk about what you brought to the job. That's what's really going to catch my eye when I'm scanning. We'll talk about LinkedIn as well. Here, let me see this question. I separated from service in January. Should I update my resume and LinkedIn to reflect that I left my last role? Yes, I would do that. Because a lot of people these days are looking, so that's absolutely fine too. As a recruiter, when you're looking at resumes for a recent job, are you looking at the Word doc or outputs of keywords and phrases? I'm looking at the PDF or Word doc. It's just going to, if I get 200 people that apply to the job, that's where I'm going to go in and do those search functions for the relevant keywords so that I don't have to look at all 200. I only have to look at 10 or 20. That's why I'm doing that. What about gaps? My brother was paralyzed in a car accident. I took some time off and took a part-time job. to have less stress. How to handle gaps in the resume. Must all gaps be addressed? I would address all the gaps, and I would indicate in there if you were you're a caretaker and part-time jobs in there, and just kind of and there's ways that you can handle that, and you could also talk about it. So which was a great thing that you mentioned there, is that we're going to use networking so that we don't only talk about just applying and trying to beat applicant tracking systems or justifying our gaps. So some LinkedIn best practices here. We're going to talk about customizing the URL, your headline, your about section, skills, endorsements, experience, profile, banner, and cover photo. Except for the photos, everything here and your URL pretty much looks like what we talked about on the resume. So let's go here. I'm going to look at these questions up here. Is it good to put in a part-time job that you did? If it's going to address a gap, and it depends if it's also relevant too, we'd probably just kind of have to take a look at that case by case. So I have a job interview coming up. I feel that they may be looking for someone with more experience in a manager role as where I have less. How would I stand out in the job interview so this would not hurt me? Well, that's great. You have gotten past everything and you have the interview. This is where you're going to really think about your experience. And this is where you're going to think about behavioral questions. We're going to get to behavioral questions, but that is where you provide examples of what you've done. So you can think about examples where you have led your team, and really talk about those and try to really showcase those in your question when they're asking you their questions in your answers. Okay, and I'm sure that's going to build on that. Last year I was laid off, but helped build a friend's website. In the meantime, unpaid. Is that something I could talk about? Yes, you can. You could talk about that in freelance. It sometimes appears that during the interviews I experienced two things. In some cases, the interview becomes more of a likability issue. I'm not the most confident outgoing person. Near the end of the interview, they will ask a question like, well, you don't have this or that experience, such as customer service, which is obvious. This is a trivial reason to rule people out. So with that, you just want to, and knowing yourself, kind of what I talked about, just really knowing yourself, just being really confident. And when you're confident, just really showcase that experience. And then when they are talking about you don't have this experience, this is where I kind of was talking about. Tell them, have those examples ready. Well, I understand that, I don't have this customer service experience. However, this is what I do to get this experience, or this is what I've done. So for example, if someone were to say, Georgia, you haven't used this applicant tracking system, which to us, everyone here, you'd say, well, it doesn't matter. I haven't used that applicant tracking system. One applicant tracking system, you know them all. So I would just talk about, or they'd say, Georgia, you're a recruiter in this is an education role. Can you recruit technology? And I talk about my processes and say, this is how I learn. I'll go to YouTube, I'll do my research. I'll find whatever I can, and I'll teach myself on my off time to learn this. If you want a project manager, I'll find out everything that I need to know about project managers. And then when I talk to the project managers and I interview them or look at their resumes, I'll know exactly what they're talking about. Or this is how I've been doing customer service in all of my life. And I would talk about that. So that's kind of how you know yourself. You take the inventory, and that's how you really showcase your skills. On LinkedIn, shall we have the initials, qualifications after the name? Yes, I definitely recommend that. And I'll show you right here. And this is my LinkedIn. So the professional website here. So this is, I customized my URL. And why it's important, it shows you're tech savvy and also looks nice and clean on the resume, how I have it here. My LinkedIn URL doesn't have any numbers or anything there. So I'm going to go back and show you. Here is that banner photo that I talked about. Anywhere there's a pencil, you can make changes. Here is my headline. My headline, I put technical talent acquisition consultant and founder of my organization. But then I also put some other ways that I wanted to brand myself: coach, mentor, professor. And if you have a photo, it's easier to network, and you're going to get 11 times more responses to your networking. Here, 500 plus connections. You want to get to 501 connections. I have 11,000 connections. It still shows as 500 plus, but it shows that you're really active and that you really take LinkedIn seriously. Also here, where it has the LinkedIn logo in yellow, in gold, that just means I have a premium account. I have a professional account and you could also have a job seekers account. Also here, I have open to work. What that is that I have it only visible to recruiters who have that LinkedIn recruiter seat. I do not have it. If I had open to work to the public, I would have that green ribbon there in my profile picture. Some people feel like they don't want to. It shows that they feel like they're desperate for a job. Some people, I say, well, it lets people know that you're looking for a job. It's all about your comfort level. So here is the about section. Not everybody has an about section because it doesn't default to it. I say add the about section, and that would be in that first pencil area. Here I use I statements, like I get people hired and I'm a career partner. My passion is this. I create long-lasting relationships. And then I took kind of my summary from my resume, put my technology snapshot. I have my areas of expertise. And what you need to remember that on LinkedIn, as well as your resume, when I'm a recruiter, I will do a search to find those relevant keywords, right? Even if they're using Google, I want to see those relevant keywords. So this, I've expanded it all the way. So as you know, you're only going to see a couple of sentences, but even though they're not, people have to click more, they're still, even though they can't see it, it's still searchable, right? And then I included the feature section. My featured section made sense for me. I have some of my blogs there. I have my professional website. I have some presentations that I've done. Not everyone has that, and it's not always relevant. So here, I will address that question very shortly. I wanted to get through this. Well, here, people can see your activity, be cognizant of that. Also, my work experience. Here, I want to use bullets like I did on the resume because I want it very easy and so that people can read it. I want to have those quantifiable statements here as well. It doesn't have to be a carbon copy from your resume, just the way that you want to brand yourself. So I'm going to move here. Skills and endorsements. This is where you're going to want to showcase those relevant keywords here, and the way that it's going to be looking more credible and to show yourself as a subject matter expert is when it says here 99 plus. So even if 200 people endorsed me, it's still going to say 99 plus. So here you can move around your skills and showcase the ones that have the most experience, the most endorsements. And then you have your recommendations here. It looks like I received 17. I've given 4. I really need to get more recommendations because you want to make sure that you get your recommendations. This one's from 2018. You want to keep those relevant as well. You also don't want to trade recommendations like, hey, Georgia, I'll write you a recommendation if you write mine, because they are visible and it will discredit you. More accomplishments here. You can add your courses, the organizations you're a part of, your languages, your interests are here. Make sure that you are not controversial. You will always offend someone. So no political beliefs, and don't include anything about religion there. So just wanted to get through LinkedIn right there before I talked about that. Now for the LinkedIn Premium, I would say I like it because some recruiters think that if you get that you're very serious. I don't necessarily think that. It doesn't bother me if you have one or not. But why I like it is you get access to LinkedIn Learning, and you can learn anything. You could go from interior design to resume writing, coaching, PHR certification, whatever you want. And then also you have in-mails where you can reach out to people that you're not connected to, whereas in the basic account you won't. But otherwise, for me looking at it, it doesn't matter. I just want to make sure you have the experience. Other recruiters may say it's very important. So I included my networking slide right here is because you want to get your application noticed. We have a lot of people, a lot of things that we're worried about getting past the applicant tracking system. If we are socializing, and I know everything with the pandemic, we are doing everything online now, social distance and all that good stuff. So that's why LinkedIn has become very popular. A lot of individuals have been using it, and you want to get yourself noticed, right? And then also the hidden job market, where people know that they're planning that they're going to be hiring individuals, then they know that, hey, I already have someone that's a great HR person that I met at this event that I was on, this Zoom event. So how would you do that? Like meetups, professional associations, joining free LinkedIn groups. Now, what I'm going to recommend is with the job search, kind of be organized. So you could create an Excel spreadsheet and say, these are the jobs that I apply to, and have a column of who do you know and value proposition for the organization, like vision, mission, value. And then you could also create a target list of companies. It doesn't matter if the job is open or not. These are the companies that I want to target and work at. So I'm going to talk about the LinkedIn company page. So you just do a search. I used West Monroe right here. I'm on the company page. Here it includes all the information that I need to know about the organization, right? So I can determine the mission, the vision, the value proposition, and who I know. Here it looks like about 1,500 employees have associated themselves with working at LinkedIn, and I know about 4 of them. If I click people, then it'll show me the different people that work there, and then I could see any shared connections. So do I know the shared connections, right? So when I put in my spreadsheet about people that I know, then I can also craft different messages for my relationship with those individuals. So now let's say I don't know anyone at all at the organization. It doesn't mean that, hey, I don't have an in. I can go ahead and be a little bit creative, use this people page and say, if I'm a customer service person, who can I could determine who the hiring manager is and reach out to them. The reason why I want to go to the hiring manager rather than the recruiter, because the recruiter might have 20 jobs that they have to fill, and if 10 people reach out to them, that's about 200 people are reaching out to them. Whereas the hiring manager may only have 10 people reach out to them. And I like to use connecting with individuals, and the reason why is because I know that if they accept my invitation, I know that they're active on LinkedIn. So I might write on there, let's say if I'm applying to a job at Uber, and I like to make it about them, not about me, I could just say, hi, I applied to your job. And I'll say, hi, hi, I applied to your customer service job. I want to be at Uber because you're cutting edge. You created the rideshare industry. That value proposition resonates with me. And I'd like to connect with you to find out more. And then let's see if they connect with me. And then I kind of gauge on what I'm going to say next. And then at that point, I'll just say thank you for connecting with me and kind of let the conversation evolve that way. Then I'll talk about how I evolved, how I align to the job, and also put in a call of action as to, can we have 10 minutes to discuss this further? So that's just crafting messages and kind of working through that process, and kind of how, if I don't know anyone at the organization, I've applied to the job, I don't want to sit and wait around for that. I'm going to go find the hiring manager. And, how can I determine that? If I go in and I say, it's a customer service manager, the job is in Chicago, I see 3 customer service managers, I'm going to reach out to them and write them all the same message, if that makes sense. And I'm sure I have a question about that right now. Courses completions valid to include on the resume under education and certifications. No, I would not include that there, but you can include these courses on your LinkedIn, and they allow you to do that. But I would not put them on there, because they're not professional certifications. if that makes sense. So now I know I talked about networking here. Any questions on that? I wanted to go over that pretty quick. Okay, so let's talk about the interview process. Ensure that you're listening and providing questions to the answers that are asked of you. So you are the interviewee. However, you're also going to want to be you're interviewing the interviewer, right? So pay attention to those red flags. So this next slide is where I'm going to be talking about the types of interviews. So the pre-screening, that's you're going to have your call with the HR recruiter, with the recruiter, and they're going to ask you your salary requirements. I want you to do your research and kind of take into consideration what you've made and take what you're making or what you've made. Also take into consideration the external market. So you can go on different websites like onetonline.org, ONET online. And what that is the free website from the Department of Labor. And what they can do, what they do there is the HR people can use that to create job descriptions. Also as a job seeker, you can take a look at the different knowledge, skills, and abilities, as well as industry outlook and salary information, as well as look at Glassdoor. With Glassdoor, it's self-reporting, so you have to take that with a grain of salt, as well as you could look at salary.com and combine all of that information, and you could get a good salary range. So if I were asked this question, I'd say, you know, and my target is 95,000. I'd say, well, my salary requirements, well, that really depends on the role. However, based on my experience and my research, I'm looking for 100 to 110,000, but I'm negotiable. So that's how you would, that I would recommend answering that type of question. So the different interviews here are face-to-face, remote, or Zoom. You can have a one-on-one or a panel, have multiple people interviewing you. A group, what that is that you have multiple people interviewing at the same time. And then the launch interview, well, not necessarily right now, but in the past you could have one. The Zoom interview, what I'm going to say, very plain and simple. Treat it the same way you would an on-site interview. So the only difference here is that you would not be shaking the person's hand and probably worrying about if your shoes are scuffed. But otherwise, I'd make sure that I'm dressed appropriately, dressed formally, make sure my environment looks good, that my computer works, that I have that eye contact, and that I'm addressing people appropriately. So my next slide is where I'm going to be talking about behavioral interviewing. So let's see. How do you find the hiring manager again? Oh, well, go on the LinkedIn company page, and you could do look at people, and you could do a search under people. Is it appropriate to say regarding salary, I trust your organization is competitive? I don't like that. I want to hear, I want you to tell me what that is. Are the courses offered by Illinois IT Training on Coursera also valid? It depends. If these are professional certifications, then I would include them. From my perspective, and so that's my perspective on there. So the different types of interviews, there would be technical skills questions, and I'm going to move to situational. The situational questions are what if this happened? What if you were in this situation? And then also I have here, be careful to notice red flags. You notice red flags about the questions that they're asking you. So I'm going to move into behavioral. The behavioral questions are, when I ask you, tell me about a time, and I'm going to say, tell me about a time you created a spreadsheet. You're going to want to use the STAR approach to answer these questions. It's story, action, results. So you're going to tell me the story, and then you're going to tell me how you did it and the results. And it's what I'm looking for as an interviewer is anybody can tell me the story and anybody can come up with a result. I want to hear the action. I want to know what you've done to accomplish this, to make sure that I know that you've really done the job that you're saying that you've done, and also past performance or past behavior or performance is indicative of future performance. So that's why I recommend that you need to know yourself, know your experience, so that you could come up with these examples. Because if you don't give me an example and I'm asking for an example, then that is one way that I will disqualify you as a candidate. Is the salary example you mentioned 95,000 as a target and asking 100 to 110? What is your minimum acceptable salary question on a job application? So here, then I would say if my minimum, I would raise it to, if it was 95,000, I would raise my minimum to 100. My target is 95,000 and I want to come in at a little higher. I'm including a course in progress from Coursera to help me with the transition from telecom to show that I take the initiative. Well, you can. So the way that you would do that, I guess I would say professional courses in progress. I probably wouldn't put that down under certifications. There's going to be a different way for you to kind of put that on your resume. I would not put it under certifications in education. So that's you kind of have to be creative in some ways. You don't want to misrepresent yourself. So these are just best practices that I'm talking about, so it's just, it's best practices. You have to, it's, and in HR, we're famous for saying, we treat people consistently. It's not black and white, but we take it case by case and we have to investigate. So if that answers your question. So after the interview, you want to make sure you send a thank you to everyone after every interview. Vary it up a little bit. Don't send everyone the same one in case they go ahead and share notes. Try to send the thank you within 24 hours if you can't during the same day, just not immediately. And if you don't, in the Zoom interviews, it's going to happen. If you don't have the hiring managers or everybody on the interview panel's email, send it to your point of contact, to the interviewer or to the recruiter, and say, I enjoyed my time. Thank you so much for setting up the interview. I don't have their contact information, but can you forward this thank you email to the team or to the hiring manager? Okay, that's how I would address that, and that's perfectly fine. So I want to go back to interviewing. So the way that I would close, and you want to make sure that you have interview questions ready for the interviewer. So when you do that, you want to make sure that you don't ask any questions that you should already know the answer to. So if I'm going to apply at Facebook, I'm not going to ask them about the competitors because I know that that's Twitter, or I could find that information out there. And if they've already, and if I'm going to ask about the culture, but they've already talked about the culture, I can't ask them a question about what's the company culture like. However, what I can do is say, acknowledge that they've already talked about the culture and say, that's great, you've already talked about the culture, but I'd like to know a little bit more about this. So that's the way you could do that. You could also ask them about, about why they joined the organization or what their most favorite thing about working at the organization is. Well, make sure you have a few questions ready so that, in case they've already answered that question, you can ask another question, a different question. So you have 2 or 3 questions ready just to show your interest. So and then after you ask all the questions that you possibly can without putting your foot in your mouth, I would close the interview with saying, thank you so much. You've answered all of my questions. I'm still very excited about the opportunity. I'd like to know next steps. So then at that point, you're closing the interview. You know when to follow up. Okay? And then I'm just going to move to my next screen, which I'm almost finished, as you can see. At what point you ask the financial question, sales, profit, margin. In this case, I would say, can you do the research on that prior and how you would address that and how you are going to phrase those types of questions. So I would ask that either, at the end and kind of, but make sure that those questions are relevant and you can't find that you don't already, that you should not already know the answer to that, and phrase it that it's not like an interrogation. So when you say red flags from the interviewer, what are questions that signal red flags to me as an interviewee? All right, good question. So sometimes you have to take this with a grain of salt, as sometimes interviewers are not skilled and just ask questions because they know that they think that they should ask questions. But let's say that someone keeps asking you questions about conflict and how you would handle conflict. I would say if you ask me many questions about that, it seems to me that there may be a lot of issues with conflict here. Or they would ask me a lot of questions about not having resources. That might be a red flag for me, right? So, okay, I saw that question disappear. Now, offer and salary negotiation. Here, at this point, the employer is very excited. They've fallen in love with you. They want you. They want to give you the job. So if you negotiate, you should be fine as long as you're professional. As well as, if you had that conversation about pay in the initial interview, and then all of a sudden I said I wanted 100 to 110,000, then all of a sudden I say I want 150,000, that's unprofessional, unless I have a reason for that. So there's different ways for offers and salary negotiations. So there's ways that you could leverage job offers, or you can speed things up with other people regarding offers. So there's just all these different scenarios, but I can give you a general scenario on how to go in for the salary negotiation. So, but let me address these two questions. When it's a private company, the financials are not available to find. So in this type of situation, then you could ask those different types of questions, but again, make sure that you're framing those appropriately. Can you negotiate vacation time and other benefits? You can, other benefits, no. Vacation time, yes, but possibly it might not be, you may not be able to, depending on company policy. So this is what I would say if I'm offered a job, right? And I'm going to phrase it the same way I phrased my salary expectations. I'd say, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very excited about the role. What I'd like to do is see everything in writing. I'd like to see the benefits information, and I'd like to have maybe 24 to 48 hours to think about it. And this is something, so I want, no matter what, I want a time to think about it. Then I could come back and I'm going to phrase it as, and I want to have a phone conversation because I like to have those cues so that I could hear how they're taking the information. And I don't have any other offers. I don't have any other reason to ask for money, like I'm compensating for moving, or I'm compensating for travel, or compensating for the benefits premiums too high. I'm just coming in straight and saying, I said initially I wanted 100 to 110,000. This is a conversation that I'm having in my head. Okay, so I'll come back and I'll say, thank you so much for the opportunity. I've gone ahead and taken a look at all of the information that you provided to me. I'm very excited about the job. However, based on my experience and research, and they offered me 100,000, I'd say I'm looking for 100 and 105,000. How can we get to that point? And kind of see at that point what they say. Do you think revealing any kind of medical history might affect a company's decision to hire? For example, I have certain allergies and I'm diabetic, so I need to make sure I get time for lunch. No, they should be able to make reasonable accommodations for you. So now if there's ways that you can say, I have a couple of offers. I'd like to, you could come in and make a counter offer that way. Or you can say, if you get an offer and then you're far along in another interview process for another company, you could go back to that other company and say, I did receive an offer. You're my first choice. However, you're my first choice, and I want to make sure that I make the right decision for me. So where do you, when do you think you could make a decision? Can we speed up the interview process? And then you kind of see what they say. And if they say, we'll have a decision for you by tomorrow, and you need more time, you could go back to that other company and say you need more time and kind of tell them kind of the same thing. You want to do what's right for you. So I'm just going to go to my next screen, which is questions. So I'm going to open it up. Pay scale has a big range. Should you avoid the lower end of the range, or can you possibly price yourself out of the job? All right. So when you're looking at like pay scale, so this is the way that things work, is that in compensation world, there's a range. So let's say it's 100, it's 100 to 120,000. Doing math for me. So so right in the middle of that range, that is where the person that's fully functioning perfectly has the perfect amount of experience for the role. And this is where, so if someone has more experience for the role, then they're going to go above the midpoint. If they have less experience, then they're going to go below. So you don't necessarily need to go all the way at the beginning of the range. You're going to kind of want to determine where you are with your experience. So that's why it's important not to just go out there and throw a number out there and say, you know what, I should be making this. You got to take your experience and your uniqueness into consideration. And if you want, I'm going to say, if I'm going to go for a job and I want $100,000 and they are paying me $80,000, there is a disconnect there. Is it my experience? Is it the job that's not the right level for me? And if I price myself out because I want 100,000 and they're paying 95,000, then that's a red flag for me. Also a red flag for me is if they won't let me think about a job offer. That's a red flag. So there's just different things there. If you're not planning to utilize an employer's insurance, could this be a reason to negotiate a higher salary? You can say that, but it's not necessarily always taken into consideration because they're going to still offer you the insurance. So they may not do that. Why would you not mention your PhD on your resume? I feel like sometimes because they may think that I want too much money, right? They may think that it might just be a stepping stone and I'm not going to take the job seriously. It's just for how I feel. I feel like for my recruiter role, when I'm doing my research, when I'm talking about those relevant keywords, I don't see it mentioning it. So let's say, for example, like I'm in machine learning or something and the technology is not out long enough, right? And they're taking PhD as something that is going to help, justifies experience, then I would. But in recruiting, just because I have a PhD is not going to help me. It's more about my professional experience is going to help me. So, I mean, if you want, if they can open it up and people can talk, or we could do the chats, it's perfectly fine. I'm open to more questions. I know we're over time. If I'm a career changer, but I have relevant experience, will I treat myself as an entry-level applicant? But what do you mean by that? I think I need a little more information.
Let's see.
I think I need a little bit more information on that. Treat yourself as entry level. If you're talking about like on a resume, then I would move that information, like if it's education or training that you're taking, then I would move that up on the resume. That's how I would treat that as entry level. Or are we talking about price, like salary? If it's salary, then I would treat myself as entry level. So if you exclude your PhD from an application, can they fire you from that position later if they find out? On my job application, I would put that in because then they can verify that. I would put it there, but not necessarily on my resume. This information is on my LinkedIn too. So if they wanted to see it, it's there. I just don't put it on the resume. And a salary. Yeah, then I would have to treat myself as not having as much experience. So I would go under the midpoint if that makes sense. So can you address resume length again? Yes, it could be what people of course want 1-page resumes, but if you have too much experience, right, and it's relevant experience, then you could go to 2 pages. I was an executive assistant at a major company. It was over 15 years ago. Now I'm applying for the administrative assistant that I'm really overqualified for. Is there any way to let an employer know about this higher level of experience? Well, you would put that on the resume, your experience, and you could use your headline to bring that out. And then also I would also network and go and talk to the different individuals. And when you're networking, you're meeting people, you're talking to people. You don't have to worry about really showcasing that on your resume or cover letter, right? You're using your resume and you're using your LinkedIn to pique people's interest to contact you, because there's only so many things that you can showcase and brand yourself as, right? So you want to have someone pick up the phone and talk to you so you can really showcase your skills and show your uniqueness. How do you ask about average hours per week? I have been working a lot of hours, and they may increase temporarily. So I would talk about, and mention that work-life balance is very important to me. Can you tell me how that would be addressed in this organization? So that's kind of how I would do that. And how about someone who has been self-employed for a very long time, now coming into an industry and looking for a position? So basically, I would, when you're self-employed, I would, showcase that, kind of how I did on my LinkedIn. You can feel free to take a look at mine, and put my organization there, and list that out as experience, and really talk about in your summary, kind of showcasing just like you would as a regular job seeker. And then you're going to network to kind of justify why now you're really looking for an individual contributor or a direct hire job. So if you have a disability and don't include it on your application, can you be fired for this? That's a tricky question, because that may not be the case, but it may be treated a little differently if you want to have those accommodations later. So that is a very tricky question, and it depends. And I would always defer. So as an HR person, I would defer to my legal department on that. So anything else? I know I was kind of going through those questions kind of fast, and I hope I addressed people's questions. I would suggest the person to dig deep on job skills from self-employment to a corporate growth to see what skills and experience can be transferable. Yes. Because when you're in that field, if you're self-employed, you're going to take those skills and treat it like as a regular resume, right? So it's just because you worked for yourself doesn't necessarily mean that you can't go work for an organization. It's going to be more, I feel, it's having those transferable skills, yes, on the resume. However, it might be you want to have that conversation to justify, because people are going to wonder, why do you want to work for me now? And that's where I like to have those conversations and be ready to address those type of concerns. How do you let a potential employer know that you're actually looking for a lower level position? I've worked in large companies, high pressure situations, I want to take a break. So that's where you're going to use that headline and that branding, right? And that's how you're going to kind of take a look at your LinkedIn and your resume and really brand yourself in that manner. And another way to do that is to network and have that story ready. Can we get a copy of the presentation? That would be something that Jim could answer. And then will you give us a code that our career counselors requested for workshops? That's a question.
It's already in the chat room.
Okay. Isn't it optional to disclose a disability on an application legally? Yes. And so that's why it's just the way that I would say that I can't necessarily say, it's just a very difficult situation. It's up to the individual, and what it is that it's going to be difficult for you to ask for a reasonable accommodation later if you didn't talk about it initially, if that makes sense. And I don't know if, and I'm sorry if I misrepresented and said that you could be terminated for something like that. So it is optional, and and like I said, it's a difficult question to answer. Case by case, I would take it. So okay, if you keep it to a one-page, one limit when you have over 20 years in the field, should you still include education? Always include education. There's a way that you could format things and be creative. Also remove the overqualification experience in the resume. You don't want to have the executive experience. Yes, because you're going to want to brand yourself appropriately. Thank you, Daisy. Someone in his 60s taking job training for a new job. How do you explain long periods of unemployment? That one we would, we would have to take that case by case and take a look what you were doing during that time and see how we can make that work. Via word, color, fill function. How do you use that to make those pseudo columns? Please just quickly mention function menu. So you just go to where the, not the paintbrush, but it's just the, I'm sorry, it's just that the paint can, if that helps. That's what I use. File in, yeah, so I would have to actually go in there and show you. I apologize for that. Anything else?
Well, Georgia, I think we'll wrap it up at this point. You've really covered a lot, and I'm just going to wrap it up. And I am going to go here.
Okay.
The recording will be on our website, so we have to edit it, and it will be in there probably by the middle of the week. You just go under Job Seeker and go to our webinar page. Let's see here. Too many boxes open, right? Okay, this is the code. I already put it in the chat room, CAHP221. You give this to your, email it to your counselors. It shows that you attended today. It is part of the requirement of the WIOA, Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, to maintain contact with your counselor and to have monthly contact and to show that you've attended different workshops. Let's see. In March, we have the achievement-based resume with Fred Johnson. He will be from, he's from Path Group at Compass Church. Excellent presentation. March 26th, we have opportunities in information technology. I have 3 strong employers coming in to talk about what the opportunities are. April 9th, we're still working on that. And then April 30th, opportunities in transportation, logistics, and supply chain. We'll have 3 to 4 employers in there as well. These opportunities in different fields is to hear about companies, hear about positions that you normally don't think about. I know sometimes in, like, let's take Sentinel, for example. You think it's IT, but they have positions like, I think they had 10 positions listed with us: admin assistants, creative director, accounting. So this is why I started these opportunities in various fields. Let's see. Again, just a reminder, please let us know when you find a job. You can email me, but definitely let your counselor know the type of jobs, the positions, and your salary and benefits. And this is my email if you get a job. I love to hear your stories. It makes me feel good to know that we've helped out in some way, that the tactics work. And then also you could be part of Fergal's All-Star lineup where I use your story to encourage others. If there's nothing else, I thank you for your time. Georgia, thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation. Learned so much and hope to see you in the future. I am planning on doing a recruiter roundtable, and Georgia said she would like to be part of that. So thank you again. Okay.
Thank
Alrighty,
you.
everyone. Look on our website next week, and this presentation will be up there. Thank you, Georgia. Okay.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Alrighty.